Hello, friends. There's a lot of talk these days about faith deconstruction, a lot of controversy, and a lot of misunderstanding. I've recently written a letter that is so important to me that I've decided to read it on video. Thanks so much for taking the time to hear my perspective and my heart. I hope to bring some insight, curiosity, kindness, clarity, and hope to this difficult topic. Let's dig in. Dear friend, I want you to hear my heart about this topic of deconstruction. I'll give a little more definition to this word later on. I don't expect people to agree with me about everything, but I'd love for you to be curious about it. As a graduate of a conservative Bible college and a master's degree from a conservative seminary, and with almost 19 years in private practice as a psychotherapist, I have been personally and professionally processing these issues for the last 20 years or more. Every day in my office, I sit with people who are agonizing over their faith. They often tell me things they have admitted to no one else because they are scared. The foundation of their whole world is crumbling. They are profoundly struggling to make sense of God, their spiritual existence, the Bible, and their church experience. In my office, in my home, online, and in coffee shops all over, I have sat with hundreds who represent millions of people who are feeling tormented by their doubts, their questions, their anger, their guilt, and their confusion. There are so many reasons why they are questioning. Their stories are so varied and so poignant. Sometimes they have a horrible sinking feeling that the paradigms they had adopted just don't make sense anymore. Sometimes they feel an agonizing spiritual emptiness when exposed to church sermons, church services, religious ideas, things that are supposed to nourish, and they know they desperately need something more or different. Sometimes they have been the recipient of a cliched biblical response to their intense suffering. Sometimes they feel painful dissonance and confusion when seeing this church strategically unite with worldly powers that it previously preached against. I listen carefully to these people because I comprehend the profound truth of their experience. In varying ways and to varying degrees, it has been my story as well. So what can deconstruction look like? I put deconstruction in quotes because of the broad, loose way in which the word is being used now, for better and for worse. This letter is attempting to describe and define how I'm using the word. A deconstructed faith can look vastly different depending on the story of the individual deconstructing. There's no one normal process or outcome of deconstruction. Deconstruction, as I'm defining it, is any shifting in the direction or orientation of your faith, spirituality, or theology, or leaving your previous faith altogether. Faith deconstruction is when you begin to intentionally dismantle your previous faith assumptions and beliefs. These changes can be minor and subtle, or a dramatic 180 shift. Some people who are deconstructing retain a faith that can look similar to the one they deconstructed. For example, they now believe that women can be leaders in the church. Some end up reimagining a faith that is still under the same umbrella, but expresses itself very differently. For example, they may still identify as Christian, but attend a more progressive church. Some retain a deep Christian faith, but don't attend a traditional church. Some people shift in their faith and swing much further away from their original faith than others are comfortable with. Some people leave the faith. Some people switch to another faith. These are all possible outcomes of genuine deconstruction. Often these wider swings away from their previous faith are a desperate, life-saving measure to get distance from the severe trauma that has been caused by the religious system they were previously immersed in. Are these atheists and agnostics throwing the baby out with the bathwater? Possibly. Does a combat veteran sometimes need to limit their exposure to cars backfiring, even if the backfire isn't gunfire? Probably. But many of those leaving have been severely wounded by bullets in the church. So these dear souls start to deconstruct by distancing themselves from God, the Bible, the church, or the people who attend those churches, by limiting their exposure to the church's power and control maneuvers that have severely damaged them, by walking away from toxic guilt, shame, and fear and confusion in their religious institution, by trying to save what is left of their life, their souls, and their sanity after ultimate power, what God says, has been leveraged against them and almost destroyed them. If you've hung in with me this far in my letter, I am deeply grateful. Thank you for tolerating the discomfort of this charged topic. Would you mind staying with my train of thought for a few more paragraphs? As you hear more and more on social media or at church about whatever this faith deconstruction thing is, you're likely worried, angry, or maybe even a little disgusted. It is emptying your churches and it feels threatening. I understand. Deconstruction has been called trendy. It's only giving people permission to sin. It's a conspiracy of the left, or any number of things, other caricatures, labels that permit us to form an emotional reaction, put people in boxes, and feel more comfortable with such an uncomfortable movement. How can we have an honest and possibly uncomfortable discussion about this topic? How can we open our hearts to the experience and stories of millions of people who have walked away from what their previous faith looked like? What if we were to engage these people with dignity, genuine curiosity, and understanding instead of possible judgment and dismissal? What if people leaving the traditional church is not a catastrophe, but a divine opportunity? What if these people deconstructing are in reality deconstructing a tainted and poisoned gospel? What if their exit could be a purifying invitation for the church to ask forgiveness for the many, mostly unacknowledged wrongs it has committed? And what if God is so big, so creative, and so redemptive that there is a beautiful plan for those deconstructing, a plan that is outside of our limited scope or experience or theology? Here's why I'm not threatened by deconstruction. First, this label may be new, but the process is as old as Christianity itself. Where would we be if Martin Luther had never questioned or challenged the religious powers or deconstructed? Where would we be if hundreds of other reformers, mystics, and Jesus followers through the millennia hadn't questioned the existing church structure of their era? Second is that faith, if it is indeed alive and growing and a powerful force, must change. And this change can take on a wide variety of expressions. If we are trees planted by the rivers of water, as Psalm says, we must change. We are not acorns anymore. We are not saplings anymore. If we're growing in our knowledge of the divine, we name fewer things unclean. If we are changing old wineskins for new ones, this implies that the consistency and quality of our faith is changing. If we are growing in our awareness of God, self, and others, our view of God changes. We put away childish things and childish ideas of God. If we're growing in our ability to tolerate uncertainty, we admit more and more freely that we see through a glass darkly. If the same yesterday and today and forever is true, then I hope and pray that our experience of God is not. I want my finite constructs around the sacred to be consistently challenged, deconstructed, deepened, and broadened. Faith, if it is real and transformative, can be messy. Many of us raised in the church were bottle-fed a love of certainty. The more theologically precise, the more spiritual the person was assumed to be. The more convinced and dogmatic the speaker, the more we were willing to believe. We memorized doctrinal points and subpoints that no one dared question, and were then rewarded with being able to give an answer. So, are certainty, theological precision, dogmatism, and memorizing doctrinal points and subpoints wrong? Maybe, maybe not. But my point is this, and I think you would agree with me, these can often become empty substitutes for a genuine, growing, transformative, evolving faith. I hope we are all deconstructing. I hope we are all questioning, reevaluating, asking hard questions about our brand of theology, letting go of old paradigms that don't fit anymore, walking away from the templates that have done us harm, and like Jesus, standing up against right doctrine leveraged with a power that injures and scars. Why would we not? May we all continue to deconstruct, to question, to stay curious, to stay compassionate, to reimagine a growing, dynamic spiritual life that continues to transform us. With love and hope for growing awareness, Connie.